On this Thursday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, do you have any worries about how the Houston Texans will get after the run game and stop it? Also, with all of the offensive line changes, we look at our early offensive line projections.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, Bulls on parade, South Side, North Side, all together. Welcome to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. We are your credential media members. John Hickman, that's Brian Big Stars Barfield. Thank you for making us the first listen of your day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode, we'll be diving into not cruise control, but Caley Control, making the transition smooth for rookies that will be coming in, second-year players, third-year players, and ultimately the offense overall. We look at early offensive line projections, who's going to be where, who's going to be the odd man out. We start off today's show looking at any run defense worries and if the Houston Texans can clean it up by maybe drafting best player available at 25 that can help them, or again with Raw Wright, D'Amico Ryans, we both feel like Sarge they can coach up anybody. Sarge,
John Hickman, greetings and salutations.
Welcome to today's episode, man. As always, we're getting ready to talk Texans run defense. Now, you hosted one of your live shows. I think it was the Happy Hour show.
Yep, the Texans Happy Hour show. Yep.
Texans Happy Hour. You guys make sure that you catch that on Twitter, social media. Make sure you follow Sarge Big Sarge Sports with a Z at the end. And one of the viewers said, "Hey, man, listen, we made some moves on the defensive side of the ball, but who gonna stop the run?" And so that's what we're gonna lead it off at, man. The worries that some fans may have, the Houston Texans, maybe the inability or inconsistency with stopping the run for the 2025 season.
Yeah, and John, one of the main concerns was about Tim Settle and Sheldon Rankins. And now I can't speak too much about Sheldon Rankins because he was with the Cincinnati Bengals on that. Is it Bengals or Bengals? Anyway, he
I think it depends on what side of the Mason-Dixie line you on.
For sure, but he was with Cincinnati last year, and I think he only played in 7 games because he was dealing with some injuries, and so I can't speak to what Sheldon Rankins is now. I can only speak to what he was 2 years ago, and then they brought up the name Tim Settle, so it got me to thinking, John. I'm like, I don't think that the Houston Texans had an issue with stopping the run, especially with the amount of defensive linemen that they rotate in on a consistent basis. I mean, even when they didn't have the Nico Autry, even when they didn't have Foley Fatukasi, like even when they had, I think, 1 or 2 other players that was out, it didn't stop anything because they had that position group had so much depth at it that you just constantly putting players in, rotating them in and out. And like you said earlier, D'Amico Ryans, but Rod Wright, who we had that exclusive interview and on here a couple of months ago. He's just one of those guys, man, that can just coach these guys up, and that's why D'Amico looked at these guys and wanted to bring back some of these guys and wanted to bring back some of that nucleus on that defensive line. John, it got me to thinking because I was like, okay, so I know I was watching the games. Did I miss anything as far as them being weak in the run game? And so I went back and I done some research, and they only gave up 400-yard rushing games last season in the 17 games they played. Week 3, they gave up 102 yards to Aaron Jones at Green Bay. Week 8, Jonathan Taylor, they gave up 105 yards to him. He's the running back for Indianapolis Colts. Week 12, they gave up 119 yards to Tennessee Titans running back Tony Pollard. And then, John, week 17 against the Baltimore Ravens, they gave up 147 yards to Derrick Henry. Yeah, listen, Derrick had 147. It seemed like Lamar Jackson had a 200 or something. I mean, like that game was just terrible, John. That's one of the games that if I'm D'Amico Ryans, I'm never going back to. I'm just like, hey, look, flush that out your system. Let's move on. We know we lost. We know we lost at the Beyonce Bowl. Let's just keep it moving. And so when I go and I look, John, I'm saying to myself, well, where's the weakness in the run defense? Am I missing something?
No, I'm not muted. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
No, so the first year under D'Amico, Houston gave up 96 rushing yards per game. Last year, 114. And I think when you look at some of the games where they may have given up a little bit more yards, maybe it was more of a collective effort. Not a lot of running backs came in by themselves and caused damage, but more so of a team effort.
Yes.
I think for the Houston Texans, when you look at what made them so good last year, it was absolutely getting after the quarterback. Was last year the year that they broke the sack record for the franchise?
Oh, John, that's a good question.
It may
think
have
it
been
was.
last year or the first year, but in any case, I mean, you got double-digit sack guys on your roster. You got guys on the inside that win one-on-ones and cause disruption, but they did allow nearly 20 more rushing yards on the game. And when you look at some of the players that have either left and come back or retained, those are some of the same guys that Houston had that allowed that bump in rushing yards per game. And so for me, I look at Houston having the opportunity to go BPA at 25. And this is just an extension of the conversation we held when we talked about the Texas Pro Day, right? You
Yeah.
got some late round gems, whether it be Isaiah Bond, or Jaden Blue, whether it be Jalen Noel, Jalen Royals, a lot of Jalen's, golly.
I know, right?
Whether it be Higgins in the second round. For Houston, you can go mid to late round in terms of upgrading their wide receiver room because of the explosiveness that some of these guys bring. And that will allow you to stay at 25, go BPA, and you can look at bringing in some of these younger guys that has come out of the draft. Now, regardless of how you may feel about anybody may feel about this man, VT was early on Kenneth Grant being a Houston Texan, Michigan D tackle. And when you look at what he brings, just powerful, man, strong like an ox. I love his swim move. He's a guy that commands double teams. And that's what you want from a D tackle, especially one of those guys that can benefit from everybody else. Everybody else can benefit from him, especially linebackers. But I'm going to tell you a guy that I really do like. That's the Ole Miss kid, Walter Nolan. Good blocker, good shed blocker, good line holder, eliminating offensive linemen from getting to the second level freely, but also allowing linebackers to flow in and out of gaps without being touched. He will extend the player off of him with a good pop to make the play. And I think what I like the most about him is not a lot of titty bumping going on, right?
Yep.
Get up off me. Get up off me. Let me get in the backfield. I think the last 2 seasons combined for nearly 20 tackles for loss. And to me, just watching some clips of and watching some film, it seems like different linemen, different offensive lines get a different version of him, get a different version of how he attacks to win his one-on-ones or to win his double teams. He's a smart player. As a matter of fact, 23 tackles for loss in the last 2 seasons. Smart player, young player, still learning, still polishing some habits that could harm him at the NFL level. But, guys, I think extremely highly of Raw Wright and D'Amico Ryans. Those are 2 guys that I think can get anybody ready from Saturdays to get them ready on Sundays. And so when you have a guy like Will Anderson on the outside, when you have a Daniil Hunter on the outside, and you have a depth room at the D tackle position, Sheldon Rankins, Tim Settle, Mario Edwards coming back, Kurt Hines coming back, the inside-outside play of Danico Autry, who just restructured his contract, that was finalized, and he really helped out the Houston Texans in terms of creating some operating space. BPA for Houston could be a young D tackle that could come in day one and help stop the run and get after the quarterback, play swarm defense, be relentless. And also, I think an added bonus is we'll have him in the future to play alongside Will Anderson. Daniil Hunt ain't going to be here forever. So we'll need that young, dominating player. And I think those 2 guys at 25 or around that 25th pick, Houston could very well trade back. But around that area, could come in and help Houston stop the run. And it could be an area of need for them that they're looking at as well.
Yeah. And John, that's why and you asked me a question earlier, and yes, it was in week 18 when the Houston Texans broke the franchise sack record. That was the record was 45, and I think against the Indianapolis Colts, they got that 46 sack to break their franchise sack record. So yes, they did do that, and we know what type of defense that they have. And John, I have to ask you a question real quick. So in what round though would you, because we've talked a lot about how stout that defense is, and we talked about how the defensive line unit doesn't need a lot. The defensive unit doesn't need a lot, just some backups in areas like on the defensive line, like at the cornerback position, like at the safety position. I think they got the linebacker position pretty much solidified. But where would you take a defensive lineman in the draft?
Man, right now, based on the free agency moves, I don't know. Like Houston could very well, and I think this is why the Texas Pro Day conversation was so important. So if you guys didn't watch that episode, go back and check out Wednesday's podcast, because the flexibility Houston could very well operate with, because there are guys in between rounds 3 and 5. And especially round 3 where Houston has selected Nico Collins and Tank Dell in the past. There's guys out there that could come in with a CJ Stroud and be impactful players day one.
Yeah.
And with Nick Caley heading away, right? And we'll talk about, his coaching allowing the transition to be smooth.
Yeah.
So we always have this speculation about what we would do or what the team should do. It's rare that we're able to say without a shadow of a doubt, this is what the team is 100% looking for.
Yeah.
And I lead this conversation off by saying D'Amico and Nick could all be on the same page and say, we like our D-tackle room.
Yeah.
But when I look at the depth of the unit right now, are they really confident in Kurt Heinrich for a full season and long term?
Yeah.
25 could be a long-term solution for short-term goal and long-term sustainability. So it could be at 25.
Yeah.
Kenneth Grant may be a player that you could maybe trade up for in the second round if you like him a lot.
Hold on, John.
First rounder or not.
Hold that thought. Let's go to break and let's bring this back, because before we talk about the offensive line, I got one more question I need to ask you. I think we're looking at this thing the wrong way.
Let's do that. But first, Sarge, I don't want you to talk about your advantages of being a media member for the Houston Rockets, because you see these guys live when they're at home. So it's not fair. Right. And I know you may be fooling some people like, I'm at work, I'm working, but you probably watching them games like a fan as well. So for those that want to get out and watch the Houston Rockets play basketball and get ready and hype for playoff basketball, something that the Houston Rockets hadn't had in a few years, check out Gametime right now. Imagine watching the Rockets live or the Astros. They're about to kick it off later today. Imagine them watching it live, feeling the energy of the crowd, witnessing unforgettable moments like Jalen Green dropping 50 on their head in the first round to get to round 2. There's nothing like that experience, especially in a big game. And Gametime helps you out. They come in clutch with last-minute tickets for unbeatable prices. Check out the Gametime app. There's always amazing deals going on. In their lowest price guarantee, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same seat in the same section of row for cheaper elsewhere. Plus, they provide you the peace of mind with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Before we jump back into the conversation that you and I was having, John, about the run defensive worries, and before we move on to the early O-line projections, let me take time to stop and say congratulations, my guy. 6 years with the network, man. And
Thank you.
before we end this show, I mean, maybe you can give us a speech.
I don't know about all that.
Hey, you like,
no, I will say, man, 6 years with an incredible network, with incredible leadership, with incredible people, and allowing you now for you, it'll be a year for you in October, but allowing me for 6 years to really grow and develop into who I am as I don't want to necessarily say podcaster because I'm a journalist.
Yeah.
I'm a sports journalist. I worked hard to get where I am, and so they've allowed the freedom for me to be who I am and
paying student
how I
loans
want
for
to be it.
that degree.
I got a couple more years left, and they ain't gonna have to, unless they change some stuff up with how they allow teachers and stuff, the educations to work. But I ain't paying that back.
Well, John, look. So before we went to the break, though, we were talking about I asked you a question of where would you add, like what round would you add a defensive player, excuse me, to the Houston Texans, because we know that the defensive side of the ball is pretty solidified. And then as I'm listening to you talk about it, right? I'm listening to you talk about it, John, before we talk about the early O-line projections, because I think that this is going to lead us right into it. John, do you think that I've been looking at this thing the wrong way? Do you think that I've been looking at the acquisitions that Nick Caserio has made as far as bringing in a lot of these veterans to add to this team on the offensive side of the ball? Do you think that Nick Caserio's plan may be, hey, get these guys in here and let us draft some players? And like I said, even bringing back a Sheldon Rankins, who was very good for Will Anderson Jr. his rookie year, but bringing in these veterans, John, have I been looking at this thing the wrong way? Do you think that Nick is bringing these players in here not only for competition, but to also teach some of these guys how to be pros, these new guys coming in?
For me, it's all competition in depth. I think when you have a franchise like this franchise, and when I say this, guys, don't feel away, but this ain't the franchise that featured Deshaun, D-Hop, and when it was a lot internally going on and it eventually spilled over externally. Like D'Amico Ryans from day one said, "Hey, I want to work with and build men, respectful men." Like that was at his press conference, right? And so I think that's on the franchise higher up to do that.
Yeah.
The players matter. And then you got young guys like CJ on one side, Will on the other side to do that. I do think that maybe the vets are just somewhat placeholders. Like if the game plan right now for Houston is we know what we need to do, right? We've tasted success or what we got close to the door, was able to knock, couldn't open up. Let's make sure that when we do have to rotate guys in and out, when we do have to lean on the next man up, that guy's ready. It is not placed on the shoulders of a young guy still trying to figure it out. And it's not just not just on the shoulders of an older vet that the wear and tear may not allow him to play at a high level like we want him to do for multiple downs.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think if I can find any light at the end of the tunnel for all of the offseason moves and even the offensive line moves, that's where I look at it and say, man, they could very well say we're still going to take the best offensive lineman available at 25. We're still going to take the best D tackle available at 25. We're still going to take the best players available at positions at certain picks because the depth will allow us to be a little bit more even keel than last year.
Gotcha. And so with that being said, going back right to the offensive side of the ball, and we've talked a lot once again about the offensive line and with some of the free agency move that the Houston Texans have made in bringing in a Trent Brown and bringing in a Cam Robinson and bringing in a Laken Tomlinson. And when you look at those guys coming in, and I think I said this on another show that you want to pencil them in as starters already because you lost 3 starters, and you're saying to yourself, you're thinking that, okay, so did you get these 3 guys who played these positions to insert these guys? But you also still have a very competent, you have very competent players still on that offensive line. Now, John, some people are saying that they think that Tytus Howard is going to be, who is, by the way, the most veteran of the vets on that team, on that offensive line. Some people think that he's going to be pushed out and that the starting line is going to be Cam Robinson at left tackle, Laken Tomlinson at left guard, Jared Patterson at center, Ed Ingram at right guard, and Blake Fisher at right tackle. And I'm sorry, Trent Brown at right tackle. And then you're gonna have Juice. You're gonna have Juice. You'll have Tytus, and you're gonna have Blake Fisher backing them up. And John, I don't understand that. I can't for the life of me picture that being the day one, like the opening game. I can't imagine that Nick Caley will roll that offensive line unit out and say, this is who we're going with, especially when you got a guy like Tytus Howard who has given, everything to this offensive line and has played multiple positions on this offensive line. You got a up and coming stud in Blake Fisher. And so I understand that we're going to have the competition. And that's why I say, have I been looking at this thing the wrong way? Are these vets here to teach others? But you cannot. I think that is ludicrous. I think it's asinine. I think it's just plumb crazy to say that Tytus Howard has no position on this offensive line.
Yeah, that's a tough one right there. And Houston restructured Tytus Howard's contract, converting a portion of his base salary into a signing bonus, which helped them, free up $11 million in salary cap. So his base salary this year is $1.17 million. The rest of his money was converted into a signing bonus. So he got nearly $14.5 million in a signing bonus. Shout out to Tytus. I look at the depth right now for this offensive line, and you have Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, Jared Patterson at center, Juice Scruggs at right guard, Trent Brown. And this is according to ESPN. So, of course, this ain't final. You got Tytus backing up Cam Robinson. You got Blake Fisher backing up Trent Brown. So
I don't like it.
I'm gonna be real with you. And you have heard me say this. Listeners and viewers have heard me say this. I've never just necessarily been that big of a fan in Tytus Howard. I felt like he's a serviceable player, but I do think it's very disrespectful to have Cam Robinson starting over him at tackle. I think it's even more disrespectful to have Tomlinson at left guard starting over him. Tytus he's a good player.
Yeah,
I'm not going to disrespect. He's a good player. He's a good player. I think the contract is where his initial contract is where I was all like, oh wow, let's dial it back a little bit. But camp is going to reveal a lot.
Yeah,
Cole Popovich and what he's looking for is going to reveal a lot. Now let me stop it right there. That's important because if the toxic locker room and what Laramie was giving off, if he wasn't grit, if he wasn't nasty, if he wasn't tough, if that was a reason why Houston moved on from Laramie, I can say from my eyes, and I got 4 of them, I can see that being a reason why Houston would move on from Tytus. Because Laramie and Tytus was very similar in that way.
They best friends.
They're best friends, right? However, them guys ain't just flat out better than Howard, man.
Yeah.
They not.
Yeah.
And I would take it a step further and say giving Trent Brown, a player who – I caught a lot of flack for Stephon Diggs going to New England, got the $23 million a year. But giving Trent Brown, a player who got hurt early in the season last year and has always carried the issues he's carried, to start over Blake Fisher, who, if we look at grit, nastiness, and all of that on a consistent basis, and he's a young guy that you want to continue to build up, giving Trent Brown the start over Blake Fisher, I think is wrong, unless they go into camp and Trent Brown is so good that he beats out Blake. But I'm going to be real with y'all, and this is just me. It's always going to be just me. If Blake ain't at right tackle, Blake needs to be at right guard. So I think ESPN got it wrong, and I think it's unfair to Tytus to just say, thank you for everything you've done. We're going to move on from you without a fight. Cam Robinson ain't better than him.
Yeah.
Cam Robinson is not better than Tytus Howard, y'all.
No,
neither is Tomlinson in my eyes.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that anybody that they've signed in the offseason is better than Tytus Howard and what he's been able to do and the way he's been proficient at every position you've put him in. Of course, he's going like we've said before. Of course, he's going to have some times where he's going to look bad. Okay, so, but when you have him at a steady position, I don't think that you're losing a lot. You're losing some. You're not losing a lot. But you know what I also think, though, John? I also think that you're going to get a very, very, very motivated Tytus Howard coming into camp because there is no more Laramie Tunsil. There is no more Shaq Mason, two of the guys that he was very close to on this line. And there's now there's an opening, John. You said the models. Yeah, you're right. The role models. But John, now there's an opening for Tytus to step up and get that C on his chest if that's what he's searching for, and be that leader in that offensive line room. Because I mean, of course, so you have to almost you almost had to yield it to Laramie with the way that he was, playing and being regarded as one of the top 5 at his position, and him steady going to the Pro Bowl. But now I think that this opens up the door when you do have these veterans coming in, but they're new. You still have young guys in Fisher and Scruggs and Patterson. They're still young guys, and he's been here since 2019.
Tytus, yes, 2019.
Yeah. Tytus has been here since 2019, and so he's the long term. So now I think that you're going to see a motivated Tytus Howard, and because he's going to be up for an extension here pretty soon, John.
Let me also add to this before we go to the next segment. Because I'm always going to try to make sense of it.
Yeah.
What will hold Tytus Howard back from being a starter? And if he's not a starter, then honestly, Houston needs to look to move on from him, right?
Yeah,
because next year he has he restructured his contract this year. Next year it's a big cap hit. Bad habits flowing over from last year and the year before. That because they are done with that. They are completely done with bad habits from the offensive line perspective, and we'll get into that with Caley's control. And if Tytus doesn't provide what they are looking for in the run game, then it's a different conversation. Right now, Tytus provides them security.
Yeah.
But when we get to training camp and when we get to preseason, and this is one of those years where unless he's hurt, we need to see him out there. Once we get to those moments, and if some of those bad habits from last year, and let me also add to Tytus's point, some of those bad habits was just happening around him and just affecting him. But if any bad habits or his inability to provide support in the run game roll over, then it could be an executive decision from the top. And Nick Caley always take care of his players, especially the good ones. Thank you for your time. We're going to move on, and we're going to go with someone else.
Well, real quickly, John, I think that barring injury in training camp or any time during the season, I think that the one thing that you're going to see, like I said, from a motivated Tytus Howard, because there's also different things at play. So not only does Tytus Howard, this isn't only a proven year for Tytus Howard. This is a proven year for Cole Popovich. This is a proven year for Nick Caley. You've gotten rid of these other guys inside of that offensive line room, and it's almost like they're saying, Tytus, this is a fresh start for you. We've gotten rid of Chris Stroud, so we've gotten rid of the other offensive linemen. It's time for you to step up, be the leader. And I know that, John, that young man has overcome a lot of adversity in his life personally. So I know that he has the skill set, the mindset to be able to, the will and determination to be able to do it. That I just think that now, I think that everybody is motivated from the offensive coordinator all the way down to Tytus Howard. And I think that you're going to see him coming in with the renewed mindset.
Let's talk about what the offensive coordinator is looking for in order for Tytus Howard to get a shot. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we close out today's show, Caley Control, sit back, relax, and Sarge, how can this be a smooth transition for Houston? First year for him.
No, you want me to go? Real quickly. Come in, set up an offense and first of all, come in and set the precedent. Hey, this is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. I don't know what it was like when Bobby was here. I never worked with Bobby. I have never coached with Bobby. I don't know. I think that Bobby's a good person, but this is I'm the offensive coordinator now, and I don't want to say this is the Nick Caley show, but it's the Nick Caley show. So you come in from day one and you set the precedent of this is how we're going to do things. This is how we're going to run things. This is how we're going to run OTAs. This is how we're going to run training camp. This is how we're going to do the preseason. You come in and you set that precedent right from the get-go and say, this is what we're going to do. And you draw that line and say, hey, look, if anybody wants to cross that line, then we don't have a place for you here with the Houston Texans, not on the offensive side of the ball. Like Cody used to say all the time, maybe you can go play special teams for Frank Ross, but you can't play on the offensive side of the ball. And so you set that first. But John, the most important thing for Nick Caley, immediately get on the same page with CJ Stroud, because CJ Stroud is almost like having another offensive coordinator on the field. And so if you can put him in a system where he doesn't have to wait for all these long developing routes to go, or he doesn't have to wait for all these long drawn out play calls, you say, all right, CJ, this is the first 15 plays. And after we've scripted the first 15 plays, the rest is going to be between me and you. We're going to see how the flow of this game is going. I don't care that I have this play sheet and that's what I want to call. The way the game is flowing, that's how it's going to dictate. So definitely got to get on that same page with CJ early.
Absolutely. Great point about that. You know, we got a script, but we ain't scared to break away from it, right?
Right.
But I also think simple, get back to the basics.
Yep.
Nick Caserio said back in February, and this was when he was asked about, is there a particular need of the offensive line to improve next year? He said, I think the big thing is you get to the players to do the right thing. They understand their assignment. They play the right way, win the right way with right techniques. Do they play with the right fundamentals? Can they execute their assignment? And then Nick Caley was asked about his coaching philosophies, and he responded with starting off, everything I'm going to preach and we're going to preach here is going to be rooted in fundamentals. I think you look at every good play, it has good fundamentals. He continue with. So we're going to start from the ground up, building foundation, building fundamentals, and getting repetitions and time on task with that. He mentioned his time with the great McVay and Bill Belichick and highlighted the personalities are different, but everything that made them successful was rooted in fundamentals, and that these are great things that transcends, excuse me, this is back-to-back days, transcends any kind of scheme. And Sarge,
yep,
that is what you want to hear. You want to move away from, like, the scheme can allow for players to get caught up in not doing things the right way, because it can scheme you open, right? But scheme can allow for offensive linemen to not play with cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Making the smooth transition to Houston from LA and this time in New England, and for players that are becoming in or that are already in and need a rejuvenation type of coach, breaking everything down, breaking all those bad habits down, getting back to the fundamentals of what the game looks like when it's successful. I think that's number one.
Yeah.
Before he can even talk, he's going to talk to CJ, but before him and CJ can even get on the same page, right? These are my expectations, and all of this starts at ground zero. We're going to move as one unit. The offense didn't move as one unit last year. Defensively, they did. Offensively, they did not. So I think that's number one, honestly, man. Just getting rid of a lot of those bad habits, and also understanding that we're not going to live and die by a scheme. Because when you do that, I think certain players can reach a certain height, but you limit certain players.
Yeah.
You take away some of the things that make players great, because in this scheme, you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I think regardless of how a lot of people may feel, shout out to my boy Jarrell Scott, Xavier Hutchinson was a victim of that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say John Mechie. John Mechie got his opportunities. He had a couple of good moments. Struggled with drops, but Houston has some players that were victims of not fitting into the scheme, and that took away from what they did well. You want to know who also was a victim of that? Dalton Schultz.
Yeah.
The scheme called for the tight end, the block, and the edge rusher, but that ain't his game.
Yeah.
And so how can you get the most
Cade
out of some of
Stover
these
too.
guys, man?
Yeah,
Cade,
Cade
but
Stover too.
I think Cade can get there.
Yeah, he can, but not as a rookie. And not going up against an all-pro defensive line, defensive end like Jonathan Grenard. Real quickly, John, what I want to see the other night when the Houston Rockets played the Atlanta Hawks, Jalen Green had it going, and when he was hot, and I'm talking about he was hot. And I asked head coach Ime Udoka, when you see a guy like that, how much of the offensive scheme changes and you just continue to feed that guy? He said, we go with the momentum of the game, and if a guy's hot, we try to feed him until he's not. Fred VanVleet was the exact same way in Miami. I say that, I preface what I'm about to say with that to say this. Hey, man, if Joe Mixon is running, let him keep running. You don't have to pass the ball. Keep running till they stop the run. If CJ is hot and he's hitting these wide receivers and y'all moving the ball, keep passing the ball. Don't stop because you're like, oh, well, now we got to run the ball. No, you keep going until someone stops you. That's the one thing that I used to love about the New England Patriots offense, John. Josh McDaniels would be like, hey, look, we're going to keep running the exact same thing until you stop it. And then when you stop it, now I can go to my contingency plan. But if this is working, if it ain't broke, you ain't got to fix it.
I think what we're going to see from Nick Caley, which is going to be good for everybody before we close out, the Texans are going to be playing football. They're not going to fit into a one-dimensional scheme. And that was the issue for Bobby Slowik in that offense last year.
He overthought a lot of things.
Overthinking, and that overthinking from up top led to overthinking from to the players in some cases, but more so not being on the same page with the offensive line coach was getting CJ Stroud killed. But for Nick Caley, because of his time, he spent two great organizations. It won't be one-dimensional, and he'll understand how to attack defenses with a natural flow of playing football. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And when you get football players in a position to where they're playing football and not thinking, you got a dangerous team. Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast.
Make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with a Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gents and bulls on parade around the world, peace.